Hello, everyone. Welcome to Layer 2 panel. I'm Queenie. I'm Token, one of the earliest Ethereum wallets in the space. So super excited to be here moderating this panel. So first of all, I'd love to invite every panelist to introduce themselves briefly and tell us what the recent progress that excites you the most about your project. Let's start with Vitalik.
Vitalik. So, the recent exciting thing that's relevant to L2s, I guess, has to be the Denkun hard fork. So, as of about a week ago, we have the blobs, and this has increased scalability for a bunch of layer twos, and there's a lot of work in the pipeline to keep increasing that scalability further and making sure that L2s can continue to have very low fees as this ecosystem expands for the next few days or for the next few years. So I think that's amazing.
Cool. So from my end, again, same excitement about Denkun update. If you've been following the crypto Twitter, it actually did a lot for a whole bunch of networks that already adopted it. The transaction fees, they actually went really, really down. Specifically for Circuit, next week we'll be launching some builder incentivization program. So that's the next thing that I'm excited
about. Hello, I'm Carl, contributor to the Optimism Collective at OP Labs, and I am also extremely excited about 4for4. I think the other things that I would be excited for are, all of the sweet contributions to the OP stack that I'm seeing today. So that's exciting.
I'm Jordi Bailina. I'm the technical lead at the Polygon ZK VM. And mainly what we are building in Polygon is, ZK rollup and the aggregation layer to connect many layers in a cross-chain, let's say, cross-chain composability. That's very much what the next challenge that we have right now in Polygon.
大家好, hello everyone. So this is Peter from Metis or Metis, depending on how you want to call it. So the most exciting thing, in addition to Duncan upgrades, which is a definitely good news for all L2s out there. For Metis, we recently deployed an infrastructure or a foundation for decentralized sequencer. So we are super excited about it and look forward to the next upgrade.
Cool, thank you. So I think everyone is excited about EIP 4844 here. But I've seen some of you have adopted 4844, but some haven't, and some of you chose different DA rather than Ethereum layer 1. So I'd love to hear your ideas about your overall strategy to make your layer 2 even more affordable.
I can start if you want. So 4844 right now gives a reduction of 16x reduction of cost just out of the box, and the network is only, so the blobs are only 10%, so they are using 10% of the capacity. There are some roll-ups still that they need to be included, but I think here there is even a lot of margin to increase the proto-length sharding maybe to more blobs in the future, and of course we have full length sharding. We should give, a good thing. So that's cool because one of the problems of scaling was that availability, and looks like at least we are in the right path at this point, and that's why this is really important. This step is a really important. It's a really important one.
Yeah, I will +1 that for sure. I do think that the underappreciated part of 4for4 is that it introduces a new type of block space for Ethereum L1, and that just sets us up for progressively improving the protocol and adding more blobs with dank sharding or whatever. So super exciting, and we have been anticipating this for a very long time. Designed the Bedrock system around utilizing 4for4 as efficiently as possible and just posting all of our data directly to blobs. Call it a day. And then kind of to touch on the alternative data availability providers, the way that we think about it is that we want to make sure that people have the option to choose but then also make sure that we are properly educating folks with the fact that, posting your data to L1 is always going to be more secure than posting it to an alternative data availability provider if your bridge is also on L1, because you're going to rely on L1 security no matter what. And so you're introducing an extra security property. But for a lot of applications, that's a great thing. And the cost and security trade-off is well worth it. So we want to make sure we support everything and and scale to infinity.
So I will be +2 on that, or maybe +3 on that. Circuit is a zero-knowledge rollup that scales Ethereum, right? As such, I strongly believe that we should be posting data on Ethereum. If you choose an alternate data availability layer, you are essentially, reducing your security guarantees and you're increasing your trust requirements. You are trusting that this data availability layer will be available forever and forever. If your goal is to scale Ethereum, well, your data should go away only if Ethereum itself went away, meaning that nobody cares anymore, right? Which is unlikely to happen. For alternate data availability solutions, who knows? They are not, sustained by the proof of time, right? So from this perspective, +2, +3, great. Denkun is here.
All right. So I have a different take because we did choose a different DA layer I think it's for a good reason, because to us, we think that scaling, of course, is very important, but for this industry to grow, adoption is even more important. So we tried a different layer of DA and reduced the transaction cost to a very low level and try to incentivize different applications to try new things on L2 with different degree of successes, but we keep trying because we think adoption, is even more important than the scaling.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe V can also talk to this as well, but just to kind of +1 a little bit what you were saying there are going to be limits to the total amount of data availability on L1, and those limits are not going to be terabytes per second. More, I don't know the latest, estimates. So we're going to need alternative data availability for, mass adoption. But
Can I just add, because I was casually chatting with my colleagues, if we start to adopt 4844, I can start competing with Optimism and Arbitrum and all that, and where we can start competing in the fee market and bring all the transaction costs up again. So it was an interesting thought process.
Yeah, just to give some numbers, we were already, so before pre-EIP 4844, more or less rollouts were like 10x cheaper than L1. With the post rollups just out of the box is 16x, and with data compression, we expect with full state data compression, we expect a 7x on top of that. So that's like 3 orders of magnitude, and we are talking here about transactions that the current cost is going to be 1 cent. Of course, the market, and we need to see applications and so on how this evolves. But this looks really promising until the point that many CDKs, many side chains that they were thinking maybe to use other chains or just using Validiums, they are really considering to just being normal rollups, full security. You just put the data on chain. That's really, I think that's the real path. Maybe not all the applications, but I would say that most of them, at least they need to consider really hard to really be a normal rollup and forget about security issues.
Agree.
So maybe the hybrid option is the best.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we converge. Yes.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, hi. So I'm from Ethereum, which is a layer 2 in denial of Bitcoin, which is the only secure chain because it has proof of work. But yeah, I think the right way to think about this is basically like, what is the level of security that your application needs? And I think there's like different data availability strategies across the spectrum. So one of the things that I've been a fan of really trying hard to revive recently is Plasma, and like basically the whole class of data availability strategies where data is stored off-chain by default, but is brought on-chain in the event of any kind of dispute or a disagreement. And that's a strategy that can actually ensure the safety of it's extra armor that you can add to off-chain solutions that can ensure the safety of a very large number of assets. So I think there's a lot of valuable ideas all across the spectrum. Basically it makes it's all about is your L2 this heavy L2 for large monetary transactions and people's account data and DeFi, or you're running a game. And if you're running a game, you probably don't need maximum security for the game necessarily.
Cool. Yeah, so I think we should all agree that a blob is amazing, right? So in order to have more adoption of blobs, I think there are some discussions about increasing the gas limit and also increase the call data cost. So are you in favor of such a proposal?
Yeah, so the increase the call data cost, for people who don't know, there's an EIP for this. I forget the exact number, it's in the 7,000s, but one of our researchers, Tony Varstetter, has been doing a lot of excellent research in figuring out the consequences of this. The basic idea is to put a cost floor on transactions, which is about likely to be either 48 or 68 per non-zero byte. And the idea of this is that for transactions that have data and that have a large amount of execution, they would go over the floor already, and so almost all applications would not be affected, but a limited number of applications that use a large amount of call data and only call data would see increases in costs. And the goal of this is basically that core developers are worried about increasing the gas limit or increasing the block count because the theoretical maximum size of a block is pretty large. It's post-compression about 1.8 megabytes. And what this EIP does is it basically decreases that size to the point where it's somewhere between 500 and 750 kilobytes without increasing the cost of almost any application. The only thing that really gets affected are there's Starks that might go up in cost by about 40%, and then there's potentially Merkle branch verification that might go up a bit, right? But even for Starks, this would get more compensated for many times over, because if you can bounce the execution cost, or if you can bound the execution block size, that opens room to increase the maximum count of blobs that can go into a block, which then decreases the cost of inside the block. So that's one of the approaches that we're looking at for short-term scalability, and that would make it much safer to both increase the blob count target and also potentially increase the amount of execution gas in a block as well, which is definitely something that there's ongoing discussion over whether that's a good idea to do so.
Sounds exciting. Any comments?
Yeah, I have one. I think that this approach, it's actually really important. I think that we are right now, or pre 4844, we were using call data for something that call data was not meant for, right? Again, I love doing that. Yes, Carl. So once now we have blobs, well, let's use those blobs, and this repricing, it in some sense is a deterrent for using the call data for the right purpose, right? Which is good.
There is one technical thing that I think is important to mention, is that blobs are fixed sites, and they also have they have field elements which have a byte that is difficult to use. You need to use bit a bit and things. And that means that for application, so if you have an application that's data intensive, you probably already have an incentive and you already go there. But if you are using part of that, maybe paying the full blob is not the best idea. So I would be a little bit more prudent before increasing the price of the call data.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe blob aggregation. Anyway, but yes, no.
Protocols. I think that here we need to create some protocols for reusing blobs for different applications. Exactly. It's a lot of space here to work.
Yeah, exactly. This is great. Great collaboration. Very excited. We need more blobs. Give me all the blobs. And yes, we have been absolutely abusing call data. It was multiple years ago, we were doing the math. We're like, wait, if we just submit everything through call data, we'll get most of the security benefits of Ethereum, but not pay as much money. And yes, that time is over. It's time to use the real thing, the real deal. Use some blobs.
Nice. We should be confident that we will have much lower fee on layer 2s in the near future. So yeah. So I have a long list of questions. So second topic, I want to talk about layer 2 fragmentation, because fragmentation is there, which actually hinders the network effect of the whole Ethereum ecosystem. So I think there are some recent proposals like based sequencing, like shared sequencing, aggregation layer, like aiming to solve or partly solve this problem. So I'd love to hear from you guys about your opinions on shared sequencing and based sequencing, or even more recently, based shared sequencing. So what are the trade-offs and what's the direction you're heading? Who wanna go first? Jordi?
If you want, I can start. The idea of the liquidity is about friction. I mean, if you are in the same chain, you have, let's say, no friction, you are already in the same chain. If you are in the same aggregation layer, or in the same constellation, you will have a bit of friction, but probably you're going to be fast. If you want to cross, the cross constellation communication, you probably need to go through layer 1. And I mean, layer 1 is not the fastest network. I mean, the finality time there is like two epochs. It takes some time if you want to be sick, but you can do it. I mean, it's maybe about minutes we are talking. And there is even another, is like cross L1, and here is a lot of work in the bridging in pack to pack, so it's like probably it's going to be even higher friction for this. All this is a starting. I mean, all this is very much powered by the ZK technologies. This is what's enabling, and we will see what's this friction at the end of the systems.
Yeah, and by the way, definitely shout out to Polygon for being very inclusive and having, including all of the different chains. And I strongly agree, we do need to include them. The one thing that I think to also mention is having a kind of like universal way to address all of the different chains. I really like the idea of being able to send and receive information from and to all of these chains. Of course, proofs are a very important part of that, but also having a kind of, thankfully we have chain ID infrastructure, but it will be nice to like build more tools that kind of like abstract away the underlying systems that you're working on. And you can now address all of the different chains and, build applications that kind of bridge multiple ecosystems. So we'll slowly get there, but to set expectations, I think it's going to be a brutal at least 6 to 12 months in terms of fragmentation. But we will get there.
So I might have a little bit different opinion here to be a little bit controversial. So look where we started. We started with single non-fragmented chain, and then we loved competing. As technologists, as innovators, we love doing that, and we broke it and we fragmented it. So let's now create a super chain, shared sequencing, whatever we want to call it. Yeah, this is going to exist for a little bit, and then we're going to break it again because somebody else is going to come and say, hey, I have a better super chain. I have some innovation that I want to put out there, so let me start competing. So, unfortunately, the world is not black and white, right? It's always going to be some sort of a sine wave. Sometimes we will be closer to, having homogeneous environments. Sometimes we will be fragmented. I think that this general problem is a problem, but I think that it needs to be, addressed from the interoperability and cross-chain communication perspective,
Yeah, I think from my view, like shared sequencing is like honestly bottom priority as far as improving cross-chain interoperability is concerned. I think, to name a few higher priorities, one is just getting to the point where we have more and better cross-chain wallets, so just like wallets that more like make the cross-chain interface look much more natural. And like I've been using Rabby, and Rabby does like a great UX on that front, and I know other wallets are improving the UX on that side as well. Another one is improving cross-chain token swap infrastructure, and I think particularly we want to see a cross-chain, at least one cross-chain token swap, instance token swap protocol, liquidity provider assisted, that is like actually neutral and like non-dependent on centralized actors to at least the same extent that Uniswap is, right? Like you should be able to build a cross-chain application and be confident it'll still work in 2027. And Uniswap does that. Do some of these like newfangled, like janky cross bridges. Do not necessarily, but we need to get there. A third is agreeing on a clear vision of how accounts cross-chain are going to work. And one of the key questions I think the ecosystem just needs to conclusively settle on is, are we even trying to give people the same address across chain, or are we not? And for the people I've talked to, I think increasingly the answer is to lean toward not doing it. The basic reason being that there will just always be chains that have different enough technology that you will not be able to get an account at the same address that has the same functionality. But then if people have different addresses on different chains, then we might as well adopt, for example, ERC3770 and put the chain name into the address so that you don't accidentally send people coins on the wrong chain. And if we have that, then a lot of dApps also need to upgrade to not assume any people have the same address everywhere, which is I think also improving. And once we have that, then things will get better. Another example of just forms of interoperability that are easier than we think, right, is a lot of people want chain abstraction, cross-chain operations, but 90% of the time people want something simple, right? So for example, use case I had. I am on mainnet and Optimism and Arbitrum, and I needed to send someone coins. They were accepting coins on Base. I should be able to send them coins on Base with a single transaction. Right now, that requires 2 transactions. Step 1, the bridge. Step 2, sending over the coins. Well, realistically, the bridge should just include as a mandatory option which address you're sending to. And then if you do that, then you're supporting cross-chain accounts that have different addresses on different chains, and you're also supporting sends to other people. So now you can already send someone coins to an address on a different chain. And this is something that doesn't even require a separate app. This is something that should be integrated in basic wallets, right? Then going further, within the context of smart contract accounts, key changes, key recoveries, account upgrading, do you do that by sending a message on every L2 simultaneously, or do we do the key store rollup thing, or do we first do the second and then explore, or the first and explore moving to the second over time? And that's something that a lot of people wants to do, right? So these are all things that make things easier from the perspective of just real UX problems that a lot of people have, and basically none of them actually depend on shared sequencing, right? So I think the way I think about this, it's focus on the stuff that's lower up the risk ladder and higher up there's a big pressing need for it ladder, and then you just move up over time, right? And I think it's important to there is a low-hanging fruit, and we have to really improve on the low-hanging fruit, where the solution to that low-hanging fruit does require less fancy tech and less $100 million startups, but more social coordination and actually solve that problem first, and then keep going.
I think that this is a really good take. When I look at these problems, I always look at them from the perspective of my grandma. The synonym of my grandma is a lazy user, right? For me, as a lazy user or my grandma, the goal is to use some blockchain application, be it whatever, Uniswap and such, right? But the goal for the lazy user is to not worry about whether this Uniswap is residing on that chain or that chain or that chain, and how the funds float over, right? The lazy user wants to have funds on blockchain and use this funds on blockchain with the respective application and be abstracted away from everything that happens under the hood. So all the bridging, everything else.
Yeah. And I do think that even though right now there are a lot of problems, we are entering a kind of new paradigm, or a paradigm shift of this kind of chain abstraction and higher level way of interacting with multiple different chains. And so even though while the user experience is kind of bad, it will be brutal. However, it is also an amazing opportunity for incremental progress across the stack, so that there's tons of things that we can do right now to improve this experience, unify the experience across multiple chains, and we'll wake up in a little bit of time with all of this development progress, and our grandmothers will finally be on chain.
No, you're supposed to put inside an MPC so that the private. Wait, we're not talking about mind uploading.
No,
Do you
not
want
yet.
a part of my grandmother?
So, yeah.
So I
don't
just
want to go on chain unless I'm in an NPC, you know?
I'm kind of down. Anyway.
yeah, we're talking about grandmothers, but I remember the day I'm talking remember the day that my grandmother started using teletext. I don't know if you know, but ugly interface. Probably the worst thing on that, just because he wanted to see the lottery, the need. But I mean, and he learned to do all these buttons. I don't even know how that works. And they learned to go to the number, the page, and jump and navigate. And was my grandmother. The need. I mean, here is we are thinking, but the need, and this is very much for early adoption. But the need is more stronger than the easiness. If you need something, you are gonna get it.
So are you saying that the key to getting my grandma on chain is tell her about
I mean,
DeFi shit?
I tell you that if my grandma has a need for
if your grandma
blockchain,
knows,
they will go.
If your grandma knows she can make $100 a day on blockchain, she'll learn it.
Oh
You
god.
cannot imagine what grandmas can do.
All right, you're right. I've been bearish grandmas. I need to change.
All right. I'm not grandmother, but I'm also, lazy. Yeah, by the way, Rabbi is amazing, but Token is also working on it. Okay, so yeah.
Let me know when you have a wallet that has just immediately has the same account on a mobile and the desktop and supports smart contracts and recovery and all that stuff. I think even Rabbi has not gotten to desktop and mobile support yet, or they have both, but not linked. But no, this is the reason why this is actually important is because especially they're in the context of a lot of these apps trying to appeal to mainstream users, including Farcaster and including a bunch of them. Some of them are starting to do key signing in and key management in the application, which is a bit bad because the more that happens, the less the wallet can actually protect the user's security. But a lot of the time, the reason why they're doing it is because it's a standard expected property of every application and that it works on desktop and mobile and you have the same account and the same content. But the only way to not require individual applications to all do that themselves is for wallets to be the thing that is where the user is and is able to do the authentication piece everywhere. So the closer we get to that, also the better.
Nice, we're on it.
Yeah, just going back to the shared sequencers, I want to express that I'm a little bit skeptical on the shared sequencers. I mean, synchronous things in general, they are hard to work. And when there is two parties that they can do a lot of things to do, I mean, it's a good thing to have. I agree. I think it's a good thing, but I would prioritize first asynchronous calls, for example, or asynchronous messaging system. I think this is the first. I think it's an easier step. I remember Vitalik at the 2015 or 2016 talking about asynchronous calls in some calls. I think maybe it's time to recover all those slides and start working on this on that part. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I definitely agree. It's much easier to build a synchronous system on top of an asynchronous compute layer. But we'll have it. It's just one thing after another, right? Shared sequencing, full synchrony, it's gonna come. Just takes more work.
How about Polygon's aggregation layer just work together with Superchain? You guys can, the two ecosystem can talk to each other first.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here is via layer one for sure. Here, for example, one of the things that we are start working. I mean, we have a lot of work to do. This is something in the queue at least, but it's what we call massive bridge. I mean, massive deposits and massive exits. So the idea is that you can between rollups with a single, maybe it's one transaction every block or every 10 blocks, whatever. It's just doing all the consolidation between two rollups, or even can be a smart contract with many rollups, can be two. And so here, at the end, the idea is having a special chain where you can, it's a kind of a proxy chain. You can send everything there, and then you can do a massive exit to another chain, and the same way for importing. So there are interesting things to do for this cross-chain, cross-constellation or cross-aggregation layer protocols. But we are very early stage, I would say. Yeah?
Totally. And I think here's something, we might say, oh, they should work together, they should, collaborate. We are working together and we are collaborating, and that is the beauty of open source. Polygon has been pushing forward the ZK space for years, making tons of advancements, which we have benefited from, ZK proving the OP stack and, various other things. There's a huge amount of like cross-pollination in the industry. And so, we don't need flashy headlines necessarily to collaborate and be a part of a, broader thing.
And important, I think that having many aggregation layers in Ethereum, at least at the current stage, is very important to learn from one each other. If there is only one aggregation layer, you can do things wrong. You don't have any competition, but it's competition in the good way. It's like you need to passing messages. We need to do with a Merkle tree. We need to do with SDK. We can do it optimistically. There are many ways to do different things. So having different teams working in different, different approach. This is a way to speed up a lot the improvement. And I don't know, in 5 years, 10 years, well, we will see what we have there. But let's think for the next 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Any other comments on this topic?
Yeah, they're sitting beside each other. They're each working on some way of aggregating the fragmentation, right? And they're going to compete. So this is what I'm talking about. It's always going to be fragmented, more or less, but it's going to be fragmented.
But we can we can get the low-hanging fruits, right?
Yeah, but for example, in the roll-ups can be essentially very different. They can have different base tokens. Some of them they can have centralized sequencers, decentralized sequencers. Some of them may have different data availability strategies. The world is diverse. So allowing different chains that are some sort autonomous and they have their own thing, but at the same time they are connected with the world. This is what allow. This is the real scaling. What happened? The real way of scaling is a more parallel scaling. Talking about it's like a processor. So we have many cores. At some point, there is a limit that the core cannot go faster. Okay, so a blockchain maybe it's going to be a limit there. But if you can have as many cores as you want or many processors connected one each other, this is what actually gives you this parallel scaling. And I think this is necessary. So this. Of course, this has the cost of fragmentation, but we have some solutions to not to remove, but probably to improve a lot this friction between chains.
But the only thing I want to add is this open source culture in this industry, and because open source, our product also open source, and it's also open source. We all benefit each other by like collaborating indirectly or directly through those source codes. And I know I'm not going to name, but there's some projects decide to go close.
If you are in the space, we are building trustless systems.
Exactly.
How are you going to build the trustless systems if it's not open source?
It's really a community effort, it's an industry-wide effort to push this technology going forward. So definitely call up to make sure that, hey, that's open source.
Yes, let's go. That's the true interoperability. MIT license.
Cool. Okay. I'm gonna finish my question list, So I want to touch a quick one about upgradability. I think it's a question related to, safety, liveness, and decentralization of the system, but that deserves more discussion because there's no perfect solution yet. But OP team, I think you guys introduced the decentralized security console to govern the upgrades, but are there any more potential solutions that you can share with us? Anyone?
Stage 2 or bust. Okay, so of course we are going to make the upgrade process as decentralized and secure as possible. Security Council is a big part of that. Having a citizens house is also a really big part of that. Building out identity systems so it's not just token holders that are driving upgrades. All of those things are super important for decentralized governance, without question. However, it is incredibly important, arguably the most important thing, to make it so that even in the case of a governance failure, there are recourse for users to exit the system. In order to do that, it must be the case that cryptographically we are preserving the right to exit for users. How do we do that? Well, we do it by initiating upgrades on chain with a delay, and that delay must be long enough so that users can exit the chain. How do we do that? That is easier said than done. The best way that we know how is with a multi-proof, multi-client ecosystem. This is how Ethereum is secured. This is how layer 2s need to be secured as well. And so, we're building out multiple clients, multiple proof systems. We're actually, the thing that we released recently was a fault proof system written in Go. We have a parallel implementation that's work in progress in Rust, and various different ZKPs and all of these things. So we'll need many proofs. Again, it's an open source community initiative to achieve stage 2 for the ecosystem and prevent bad upgrades.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about the concept of a security council and the concept of governance for protocol upgrades separately, because these are two different tools that do two very different things. Security Council is a small group of people that with a high percentage threshold to perform any action that is there to do emergency actions, specifically in the case of bugs. So in a world where there were no bugs, which who knows, AI formal verification technology may well get us there in a couple of decades, there will be no need for security councils. And even stage 2 basically says that a security council only has any power at all in the specific case where the software provably disagrees with itself, including disagreements between different proving systems. Governance, on the other hand, is there to do upgrades. And with governance, one of the most important checks and balances is to have a delay that is long enough for not just for Apple users to be able to outrun or for the governance to not be able to outrun the fraud-proof system, but also for users and applications to actually be able to make an orderly exit that is seamless for them, right? And that's important both to minimize costs in the case of an actual governance failure, and also to remove the incentive for governance to attempt to do any crazy things in the first place, right? Otherwise, you might imagine a governance basically saying, hey, we're the citizens, give us an extra 5% of the OP, or else, we're going to do an upgrade to do that for you. And, sure, you can, users can escape, but are you guys really going to try to do all the work of coordinating, moving somewhere else, right? And so that, in order to prevent those kinds of situations, the cost of collective exit for users and applications needs to be minimized. And then in addition to that, governance for upgrading layer 2s has the same kinds of challenges as governance in general. So there is just making sure that the governance actually is high quality, making sure that it's taking into account diverse perspectives. Having both a token house and a citizens house, as Optimism does, I think is an absolutely great experiment. I've been saying for a long time, we need to really move beyond this idea of token-based governance as the only paradigm. There's also challenges around the communication structure around the governance, like what kinds of forums exist, what are the places people talk about things that I think are as important as the final governance gadget itself. So these are things that are all important to think about and keep improving.
Yeah, and I will just say this reminded me, and I'm only saying it's a little bit savage. I'm only saying this because the room seems so pro open source here. I feel so safe. But part of being able to exit the system is being able to migrate to a new place that you can go. And so that's why, we have forkability in the Optimism Constitution to make sure that all of the code is open source and forkable. A real bad thing that could potentially happen is you get to stage 2, you technically can exit the system, but you can't actually redeploy your application or fork the chain or whatever, and you're stuck. And so what are you really going to do? You're kind of
I think we need clients developed by independent teams to perform things like exiting.
Yes, exactly, agreed.
how do you like the L1 soft fork idea?
What is the L1 soft fork idea?
Carl, can you help me to explain it?
No, V does not like the L1 software. Sorry, this is just a random spicy topic of basically giving L1 the ability through a soft fork to essentially withdraw the tokens from an L2 bridge. And so this is essentially like giving almost a power that is too tempting to the L1 validators, because it may do things like cause consensus instability. But anyway, V, you can talk
I mean,
about
I think the challenge is basically that L1 governance is like historically this very intentionally minimalistic thing, and it performs best on very technical topics, and it tries to touch on topics that affect people's financial interests only very occasionally, and like basically saying that the role of Ethereum governance is to be like emergency backup police of like governance mistakes that happen in the Ethereum ecosystem, like really expands its capability in a way that also increases a lot of outside actors' incentives to try to manipulate and attack it. So this is the reason why I'm wary of such things.
Thank you, guys. We're a little bit over time. So finally, I haven't finished my list. Okay. Thank you all for sharing, and thank you all for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.